I think we are going to go ahead and get started though, because I have been told that I have to stop at 3 o'clock exactly. By the way, there are no watches on me, so you're going to have to tell me when it's 3 o'clock because I can talk for days and days on this topic. My name is Dr. Nanette Odell, and I'm the President and CEO of LifeQuest Training Consulting. And I'm here because I have lived and or worked with people with disabilities literally my entire life. This is what I do pretty much 24/7. 2 weeks from right now, I'm going to be on an airplane to France. I'll be speaking at a European disability conference in Grenoble, France, and very, very honored to do so. I'm thankful that I've been able to take my passion and really help enable others, specifically business owners, to work towards a greater compliance. You guys are probably all very, very well aware of the lawsuits that have been happening for quite a while now. When I spoke last year about the same time, we were talking a lot about pool lifts. The hotels are being hit really hard related to pool lifts. And fortunately, they seem to have died down here in the Phoenix or in Arizona. Unfortunately, they are, from what I understand, in Southern California. But you guys are all, again, probably quite well aware of the fact that then parking lots became a very, very easy target. And there's a whole lot more parking lots out there than there are pool lifts. And so there has been a lot of warning letters, I should say. From what I understand, approximately 42,000 warning letters have gone out. Just blanket sent out throughout all of Maricopa County. I think it's gone beyond that. But regardless of what the Attorney General is doing, the damage in a sense has been done. And when I say the damage, the organization who has done this actually approached me and asked if I would endorse them. And I tried very hard not to laugh really loud right in front of them, but I explained very clearly that I do not support their intimidation tactics. My motto is to educate and not intimidate. And that's why I'm here today, because the truth is that we do need to take the law serious. This is a civil rights law. It's been around for 26 years. And the Department of Justice is, by the way, not very sympathetic to what's happening in the sense that I go to a lot of ADA conferences and I also speak at a lot of ADA conferences. And one of the fortunate things is that I have the opportunity to talk to representatives directly from the Department of Justice and the Access Board. The Access Board writes the laws, the Department of Justice enforces them. And when we present to them what's happening in Arizona, the response we get is, they had 26 years. Oh, absolutely, we understand, but here's what's happening in Arizona. They had 26 years. We agree, and yes, the businesses should have complied before. However, they had 26 years, and that's the response we're getting back from the Department of Justice. Essentially, they're saying, you know what, we're done. They've had 26 years to comply. They don't comply yet, we're washing our hands. They need to comply, and that's it. So it's not because the Department of Justice doesn't care. They do. They care a lot about you, but they are there to represent people with disabilities and to ensure equal access. Unfortunately, every single case that I've been out on, whether it's a lawsuit or whether it's someone who's saying, you know what, before the lawsuit happens, please come take a look at my property, 100% of the time I find things that are wrong, 100% of the time. And even if it's a brand new build, I find things that need to be modified. And the reason why is because the architects, the planners, the contractors, the builders, they're all coming in and they have to think about a lot of things. The people that come in from the cities and they do the codes inspections and everything, they have a lot of things to think about in relation to safety, foundation, supports, plumbing, electricity, fire safety, all of those things. They're looking at all of those things, and it's real easy, I suppose, to miss the ADA stuff. Well, I have sort of tunnel vision. That is all I see, and everywhere I go, this is what I see. So I'm here because I want to make sure that I help empower you guys to go out and take a look at yourself. For those of you who've really started taking a look at some of this stuff, you're probably going to notice more and more things around your own properties. You're going to notice things at other properties, and hopefully this awareness is really going to help us do what we can to, you guys have not sat down yet, you're more than welcome to come sit right up here. My friends, get over here. It's so good to see you. Come here. So we're just going to get started here, and we're going to kind of go through with this, but you guys have, of course, you have a tip sheet, and I made this tip sheet for you guys last year. There's been a lot of really exciting things that have happened since then. Some exciting things is that I've been out to see some of your properties. What happened though after last year is we were bombarded with requests to come out and review properties. And I will be the first to admit that we got overwhelmed. We truly did. Both my husband and I worked full-time jobs, and we were going out every single weekend. I think from Friday afternoon till Sunday morning or Sunday night, reviewing properties. And so for those of you who it was a little bit late getting your report, I do so apologize. We've worked really hard day and night. Like I had dark black hair last year, and now it's like almost completely gray because we don't sleep anymore. We work really hard, but we've come up with some really fantastic ways to make our system more effective so that we can work better with you. There is a disclaimer here that I hope you read, because essentially it says that AAHOA does not provide business or legal advice, and there is the advice right there that you guys have read. I want to go in and talk a little bit about, people with disabilities, the fastest growing minority population in the world, okay? A lot of people don't necessarily recognize that this fastest growing minority population has discretionary spending power of approximately $175 billion. That's an awful lot of money, because they represent not only themselves, but of course their families and their friends that are traveling with them, and more people are traveling. And so we really want to make sure that we're recognizing that we're not talking about just a small group of people. Equal access is equal access for everybody. But we are talking about a lot of people we want to create access for. Now, the Department of Justice says that in terms of what they call readily achievable barrier removal. So readily achievable barrier removal is essentially, if you have a building that was built prior to about March of 2012, for example, you fell more under the 91 standards, okay? But you need to come up to the 2010 standards. And in some cases, that may or may not be readily achievable. And so readily achievable barrier removal kind of lists out these 4 priorities. The first and foremost one is accessible approach and entrance. So you know all those parking lots out there? You can have this magnificent building, 100% compliant, and by the way, I'd love to see that. But if your parking isn't compliant and if people can't actually get in your doors, it makes it really difficult for them to enjoy your amenities. So that's actually number 1. Access to goods and services, that would be your facilities. Bathrooms, number 1 culprit, by the way. When I go in and I review a bathroom, there's approximately 80 questions I'm going down through, and 80 pictures I potentially take as I go down through a bathroom. We actually have some people here who have gone through surveys with me and at the end gone, oh my gosh, right? This is a whole lot more than what we thought. And so there really is a lot to this, but it's very important. And then number 4 was other measures. So again, because parking lots are a really big thing right now, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. The lawsuits that are happening in these warning letters, by the way, they're pretty much copy, paste, copy, paste. I've seen many of them, and they're exact duplicates except the address has changed. And so they almost always mention things like scope, signage, and dispersion. So we're going to talk a little bit more about each of those. Scope essentially means how many parking spaces do you have? Do you have the number that you're supposed to have? So I'm going to give you guys a couple of examples of some things that we've seen. One of them very recently is a fairly small hotel here in the East Valley. And technically, based on the total number of spaces that they have, they're only supposed to have 2 accessible spaces. And they do, they have their 2 accessible spaces near their 2 accessible rooms. But there isn't a space over next to the lobby, which is on another part of the parking lot altogether. So technically, even though they have the scope requirements, they also are supposed to have dispersion, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a moment. But they're supposed to have that dispersion where not only can they park next to the ADA rooms, but they can also come up to the lobby, they can ask questions, they can check in, and then they can go around. Does that make sense? And so the scope requirement is the bare minimum. If you're looking at a strip mall, and we have worked with a lot of strip malls and large-scale malls over this last year, we're not just looking at the total number, but we're also looking at if you have 10 different retail entrances, you need to make sure that you have accessible parking. That doesn't mean you have to have 10 accessible parking spaces. That would be dependent upon your total number. But you do need to make sure you have to have parking dispersed out between those. So again, this scope here is the minimum, okay? The next thing is signage. Now we have seen a lot of lawsuits related to this, where the sign is too low. Now the truth is does this hurt a person with a disability? No, it really doesn't hurt them, but it is still the law. And so it's important that we make sure that we comply with this. This is a really easy one. And again, one of the reasons why we have this title is sort of empowered to evaluate is I really want you all to go out to your parking lots as soon as possible this week and measure your parking signs. Just measure from the ground up to the bottom of the sign. Now there's some real questions. Well, is it the ground to the sign or is it the parking space to the sign? Because you know in some cases there's the parking space and then up on the curb is where the sign is actually posted, right? So the thing is the 91 standards didn't specify, and the 2010 standards didn't specify. So I asked directly the Department of Justice, the Access Board. They wrote the law, and I said, which is it? And they said, it's not clear. Well, could you do that? Could you make it clearer for us, please? What it does say is that you have to be able to, it has to be, number one, a minimum of 60. You have to, with a parked vehicle there, be able to still see the sign. Well, you've got some big SUVs out there that you're not going to be able to see a sign at 5 foot anyways, right? What I would suggest is that if there is any question at all, well, it's not 60 inches from this, but it is from that. Just raise the sign up. I would truly encourage you guys to err on the side of caution. In fact, I would go so far as to say put it to 72, put it to 80 inches. Bring it way up there. Make it really obvious by anybody driving by that that sign is definitely high enough, okay? Because here's the thing, if they see that sign's not high enough, or they even suspect it's not high enough, you could get one of those letters, and now you're dealing with everything else. And I really don't think it's worth it to have to deal with everything else when you could have just brought your sign up, okay? The sign does not have to be on a pole, by the way. It could be up on a wall right in front of the space too, okay? But that's really important. Now, I'm not going to advise you to necessarily go with what I call the cool wheelchair sign, and that would be the sporty sign. You can do that for the actual space as you paint it in, but for the sign itself on the wall that has the Arizona Revised Statute, I can't legally advise you to do that because the Department of Justice does not recognize the cool sign. We're pushing to get them to change the rules with that, but for now, I would suggest you go with the standard sign, okay? And make sure you have that van accessible space on there. Now you can see here's an example of accessible parking, and this is a perfect example. And one of the things I have been truly sad to see is a lot I have seen where people have actually put the curb cut down into the access aisle. And I really want to know who is doing that. What company is out there? I'm not kidding you, by the way. We're going to chat. Because whatever company is literally putting a curb cut into the access aisle is truly going completely against what the law is permitting. And the people who own the property are going to have that all removed. And I'm seeing it a lot lately, and it's truly sad to see. So please, 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 take a look at what these pictures show. I think we're going to, I know you guys are going to have this on your website. Call, ask me questions. I'd be more than happy to give you some quick advice, but please do not allow that to go in there. And I'm going to show you a picture of why in a moment. Again, we've got some examples right here. Here's another example of dispersion. You can see over there to the one picture, there's a large strip mall, and I think there was, again, about 10 different entrances to retail spaces. Where's the ADA spaces? They're right there in the corner. By the way, where's the access aisle for those 2 ADA spaces? It doesn't exist. So there isn't an access aisle there. So number one, those 2 spaces aren't compliant because there's no access aisle there. Number 2 is there's no dispersion. So somebody who's going into a retail space on one corner or the other, they're going to have to park without an access aisle and then go up and then go over. So what we recommended in this particular case was, number 1, they need to restripe those 2 spaces and put the access aisle in between. Number 2, they also need to create at least 1 space on each of those 2 ends. Now this is more than the minimum requirement for the scope, okay, the total number. But it does then do a better job in terms of meeting the dispersion requirements, okay? Does that make sense, the difference between the minimum scope and dispersion? You have to be able to have that dispersion out as much as possible. Okay, so again, what I want to encourage you guys to do is to evaluate the scope. Take a look at what's your total number. Do you have the minimum number at least? Measure your signs. Please go out and measure your signs. And then evaluate the dispersion. We get an awful lot done, by the way, just with Google Maps. We truly do. We can zoom down on your property, and I could practically over the phone say, this is what's going on. In fact, that's one of the things that we've started to do more and more is if you need us to come out to your property and we are swamped and we're not able to as soon as you need us to, we've evaluated kind of a different type of payment or fee schedule so that we literally can be on the phone with you. We can zoom down on your property and we can kind of start snooping around just the outside and talk you through some things. And that hopefully will at least get you started on making some of the changes that you need to make as soon as possible. All right? Now I'm supposed to do this disclaimer, and the disclaimer essentially says that if you get a lawsuit, they may ask for documentation of any efforts towards compliance. Essentially what this says is if you write it down, they might find out that you know. But let me just tell you very clearly that if you don't do anything at all, you are a target. Because you can't claim ignorance. I mean, 26 years, all the lawsuits, all the media, It's a civil rights law. We really, really just need to do this. And in many cases, you guys, some of this stuff, especially the signage and the striping, it's really not that difficult to do. And there's tax incentives. So again, I'd really encourage you to really get started on that. Again, these are some of the suggestions I have. Put your address into Google, zoom it down, go out there, take a look at the total number of spaces, and start writing some of this down so you can evaluate it. Here's a particular property we did up north where you can see, this is kind of how we had done one of the properties was we Googled down, we obviously went up to the property, we measured we surveyed the entire hotel, but specifically the parking lot is what you see here where we wrote in the example of what they had and then we made the recommendations for what they need. Now I will tell you, and I don't have a way really to sort of point and like give you like a little sign right on it, but I don't know if you can see the yellow markings we have behind the parking spaces. We don't necessarily recommend that when there are other options. So if there's an option where you can truly bring your curb cut into the sidewalk, not the curb cut down into the access aisle, but up into the sidewalk, that's what we would encourage. With this particular property, the hotel line, and literally the hotel started right there at the edge of that space, that sidewalk. So there was no space to come in. So in that particular case where there's truly no way to do an access aisle up into the sidewalk, what we would really encourage you to do is put that striping back behind the parking spaces. It gives at least a little bit more of a visual warning to people driving in and out to watch out because a person in a wheelchair would be lower down and they might be crossing that path. Does that make sense? So this is one of the recommendations we had. Again, go out, measure your signage. Make sure that if it's a van accessible space, that it also says van accessible. Now we talk about the minimum scope requirements. Let's say that you have 24 parking spaces. You're required to have one ADA space. That one ADA space has to be a van accessible space. The difference between these is a van accessible space is 11 foot wide with a 5-foot access aisle. It could be 8 foot wide with an 8-foot access aisle, but I'll tell you we don't recommend that. And the reason why is this. Someone parks in that 8-foot space and they get out of their van and they go in and they need to come back out to change their colostomy bag, to take medication, and somebody else has parked in that 8-foot access aisle. Because you can park a car in an 8-foot access aisle, right? It's pretty easy to do. A little more difficult to park in a 5-foot space. So that person, by the way, may not be able to get back in their vehicle. That would be unfortunate. So again, we really want to encourage people to go with the 11-foot space with a 5-foot access aisle. But if you have 2 spaces, let's say you have 26 parking spaces, you're required to have 2. One of those has to be van accessible. Again, one of them always has to be that extra width, okay? Again, this is a pretty perfect space right here. We've got the parking space. This shows you a little bit more of a van accessible space with the 8-foot and 8-foot. But you can see the curb cut and you can see the signage right there. But I will tell you that evaluating a parking lot is a whole lot more than counting spaces, counting the width and the height of the sign. There's a lot more to it. I'm encouraging you guys to count your spaces, count your width, and measure your signs. I'm absolutely encouraging you to do that. It gets a little bit more technical in the sense that there's also slope requirements. So if you have a parking space that's along just a little bit of a hill and a person gets out of their vehicle and then their wheelchair starts to roll back, that's not a good idea, right? Or let's say in some cases that it's a little bit unlevel and they're sort of sideways, that's also not permitted. So you have to have what they call about a 2.08% slope, which is very, very minor, okay? So we have to calculate all of those things, including the curb cuts, the flares. There's a lot of other details that when we come out to your property, we look at all of that. Again, we can't come out to everybody's property, and you guys can certainly do an awful lot of it to get yourself started too. So we'd encourage you to do that. Do you see that big red circle down there? That's what we're seeing. We're seeing curb cuts or curb ramps into access aisles. Can you see why that's not going to work so well? I want you to really see that, and I want the person who's out there designing these and building these to see this picture too, please, because it makes it very, very difficult then for a person who's getting out of their wheelchair to be able to get into that space. So again, take a look at some of those things. If you have any of this at your properties, please get that changed as soon as possible. Okay, so from the parking lot, which is again one of the biggest pieces, okay? Going inside, again, encouraging you guys as much as possible to get started on some things. So you can start lowering your towel racks, your hair dryers, cosmetic mirrors, closet bars, curtain rods, ironing boards. And ironing boards, by the way, are kind of an interesting one. I don't know if I have a picture there. I have a picture of an ironing board down there. Do you see that? I kind of like that idea where the ironing board can be down a little bit lower. Now this is one that just flips out of the wall, but you can have one, you can set that up lower even, so that the top of that piece of it there is at 48 inches maximum. But this gives you some ideas of some of the things that you can start doing now. Another thing I want to encourage you to do when you go back to your properties is close your fists all together and then start walking through your property and see, can I open the doors? If it's a knob door, you need to change it out for a lever door. If it's one of those tiny little locks where you literally have to use these two little fingers to twist it, get one of those big locks that you could use your fist to push over to open it up, okay? So again, imagine a person, for example, who has severe arthritis, who cannot do this motion that so many of us will take for granted, right? So think of everything with that closed fist and start lowering things. Again, here's some other examples. You don't want anybody, for example, to be coming to your hotel and have to reach way, way up to your countertop. Or what we see sometimes is we see the lower counter, they meant well, they have the lower counter, but it's way over to the side and people don't even know it's there. And if they do know it's there, a lot of times there's things on the counter and it makes it difficult then for them to interact. So then what you have is someone comes around and someone's like, whoosh, and trying to knock everything off the counter to quickly serve the person, right? So leaving that open is a good idea, or making it so it's really easy to move things to the side. You guys are more than welcome to come this way if you'd like. No one's gonna call attention to you at all except me if you sit way over there. Okay, so again, start changing out some hardware. You've got, another thing is the curtain rods. So here's what normal curtain rods are, right? You have to take these fingers and you have to twist them to open and to close the curtain rod. To twist it open and close, what I encourage you to do is get one of these ones where you can literally kind of put your fist through and bring those over. You can see all of this stuff is stuff that can work really pretty well for a person with a closed fist. Bathrooms, making sure that you have access on the side of the toilet. And the reason why is this. A lot of people who are in wheelchairs, they need to transfer over to a toilet, okay? So sometimes they might transfer from the front, but in many cases they transfer to the side, kind of kitty corner like you see here, and then they take those grab bars and they slide themselves over. So again, making sure that you have that clear floor space next to your toilet is important. What we see in some cases is we see bathrooms where it's almost impossible to do that. We see a lot of times where there's a men's and women's bathroom. Neither of them are compliant at all. And so what we oftentimes suggest is that you make two unisex bathrooms. So you have one bathroom that has a stall and a urinal, and you have another bathroom that has two stalls, and neither one of them are compliant. What we'll oftentimes suggest is that you make them both unisex bathrooms and make the women's bathroom a unisex accessible bathroom, if that's the most feasible. Most of the time it is. A couple reasons we do that is because number one, nobody seems to want to remove a urinal. Nobody wants to remove a urinal. Number one. Number two is in some cases it's actually easier to just redo the women's bathroom, to just take out the stall itself and the two stalls and then make that one single bathroom. You cap off the other toilet. And again, there's a lot of more details to that, but that's a lot of times what we suggest. And then you would indicate that they're both unisex bathrooms, okay? This is, I'm not going to read through this whole thing, but this is something I brought up last time, and this was from a letter from the Department of Justice to the American Hotel and Lodging Association. And I'm just going to point out some really minor pieces here, or major pieces, but just some real quick lines. What essentially the Department of Justice is saying is that you need to develop a plan to meet the ongoing barrier removal obligations, okay? So essentially here's what happens is the ADA says you need to be here, and you review your property and you find out you're right here. And that's pretty typical, by the way. A transition plan says you need to go from here up to here. Now that does not mean you have to have this all done in 3 months. Whatever you can do in the next 3 months would be great, especially anything that's outside in the public that can be easily seen down from Google Earth, where these lawsuits are kind of happening. But either way, you need to have some kind of a plan so that you can start working towards that. One of the things that we do is we kind of came up with a system where we have like a 5-point, like a 5-star hotel type of thing. So a 5 would be compliant. And a 4 would be, it's not compliant, but it's a really easy fix. Like it's a doorknob. Like I could probably do that myself, right? A 3 is a little more complicated. It's, for example, installing a grab bar. Now you might not think it's difficult to install a grab bar, but you have to have the backing behind it because you really don't want to just put that grab bar into the drywall and then someone uses that grab bar to get themselves on or off the toilet and the grab bar comes out of the wall. That would be very bad. So again, you have to make sure you have that backing. A 2 would be something like you're actually going to have to move that toilet. And a 1 would be, it's technically infeasible. Now I have a lot of people who go, it's technically infeasible, right? right? Wink, wink, wink. And I said, no, actually, I can figure out a way to do this. No, 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 it's technically infeasible. I had someone tell me it is. We had that happen a lot with the pool lifts. It's not going to be easy, but no, it is technically feasible. We found very, very few cases. So please, please, please make sure that you really get a second opinion. If someone says technically infeasible, get it in writing. Get a second opinion, okay? How am I doing on time, by the way? 30 minutes to go? Sweet, all right. Anytime you guys have any questions at all, please feel free to let me know. So this is, again, the kind of the thing I just mentioned, the sort of the 5-point scale. And the reason we do this is because when we give you this report could be really quite large. I think the biggest one we had was about 1,200-page report. That's a lot of stuff. And the first thing you want to do is you want to go down to this summary and see what are all the 4s, what are all the things that are pretty easy to fix that we can start doing pretty quickly. And then you look at the 3s and go, okay, and by the way, look at the whole thing, because you don't want to just make a little change when you're going to have to make a big change that's going to wipe it all out, that, you know, something you could do right away. So take a look at the whole thing, but we want to give you some tools so that you can get started right away. So some of the surveys you can see we're measuring, good grief, I said there's like 80 questions in bathrooms. So, you know, how far is the grab bar from the wall? How high is it? How far does it go out? There's a lot of things that we take a look at. How far is the toilet, the center line of the toilet from the wall? How much of a distance do you even have even walking into the bathroom or into the hotel rooms themselves? So there's a lot of things that we take a look at when we do this. You can see this is kind of an example of table of contents of one of the reports that we've done. This was specifically a parking lot. So again, we're measuring everything, and what you have is you have pictures with almost every single question you have. Here's some examples again of finding where the sign was too low. Here's an example of a 3 where they simply didn't have the slope requirements that are required. Here is a hotel that we had done. Again, you can see the lobby men's, the lobby women's. We had a golf shop men's, golf shop women's. This was a very big golf resort in the valley. So again, taking a look at some of the different things that you can do in terms of ensuring that your parking lot's compliant, your entrances are compliant, every aspect is compliant as much as possible. And in some cases, there are some things you're not going to be able to do right away. You're really going to have to budget for those. But again, at least you know about them and you can start planning for them. All right, again, here's some other things. We've got the desks, we've got the doorknobs. The doorknob, again, would be a 4. It's a pretty easy fix. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into this. There are questions so far. This feels very weird to stand still. I rarely do that, but I know he's taping, and so if I start walking around, I'm going to get him real busy. But I want to make sure that everybody really has a good idea of what we're talking about here, especially as we get beyond the building and we get more to the practices. So service animals. How many of you have a no pet policy? Okay, how many of you very clearly state underneath your no pet policy that service dogs are permitted? Okay, it's really important because, by the way, it would be real easy for anybody to get online to take a look and see online it says no pets allowed, and then there's silence. It doesn't say no pets allowed except service animals. So if I see that online, I'm thinking these guys don't know what they're doing. To be quite honest, think about it. Okay, what do they say with great power comes great responsibility? I know the ADA really well. And if I was an evil person, I could start looking at all your websites and I could start doing this. Please, 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 let's not get to the point where these, I'm going to say, let me think, opportunistic. We don't want anybody just scoping out your website to try to find the red flags. I want you guys to go on your website. I want you guys to Google down onto your parking lots. I want you guys to see what are some areas that we need to make sure that we're protecting ourselves. By the way, not just to avoid a potential lawsuit, but because that's what we need to do anyways, okay? So if your hotel, if your website says no pets allowed, I really want to make sure underneath it you say except service animals, okay? Other things, we talked about this last time too, if you do not yet have a pool lift, please, please get a pool lift as soon as possible. One of the things that the particular company that's put out so many of these lawsuits has said is that they're now going around for round 2. And essentially round 2 says this: if they had an agreement with you that you were going to complete something and it was within a time frame, they will be back to check on it. And if you have not completed it, by the way, the level of that lawsuit takes on a whole nother level. So I would again implore you, if you had any kind of a settlement agreement, please, please, please take it serious. These guys have a lot of people working for them, and they're really wanting to make sure that they go back and make sure that things were done correctly. So let's get as much done as we possibly can, okay? Service animals, again, is a big one. People will call, for example, they did this originally, right? They called and said, do you have a pool? Why, yes, we do. Do you have a pool lift? No. Click. There's your lawsuit. Usually within about a week or two, right? That's what you guys were experiencing. How hard would it be to say, do you allow pets? No. What about service animals? No. Click. Please don't say that, because service animals have to be allowed. But here's what I know is happening too. There's a lot of people coming in saying, oh, it's a service animal. And a lot of times people feel like they can't ask questions. And so we actually had a case last year where a hotel, a family came in, a young boy with a service dog, completely legit, okay? Came in with a service dog, and they said there was going to be a $10 pet fee. And they said, this is a service dog. And they actually had paperwork to prove it. Now, you don't have to have paperwork to prove this, by the way. But they had paperwork that this child needed the service dog, and this was a legitimately trained service dog. They still charged them $10. They got a lawsuit. Now, I want you to think about that, $10. And is that $10 really worth a lawsuit? It's not. And so, fortunately, the story ended up working out fairly well, because the people that were charged the $10 were not litigious. But we all know that that's very rarely the case, right? And so again, I really want to encourage you guys to take a look at your policy. So we're going to talk a little bit about who, what, when, where, why, and how. So first off, what is a service dog? A service dog is any dog that is individually trained to work or perform tasks for the benefit of an individual with a disability, including a physical, sensory, psychiatric, intellectual, or mental disability. Now that is not, it's not a service cat, it's not a service rabbit, it's not a service iguana or monkey. It is a service dog, okay? Now, in some cases, it could be a small pony or like a miniature horse. In some cases, that is happening. I don't see it very often. In fact, I've only seen it one time completely, and that was at the Super Bowl a couple years ago. But otherwise, we're talking specifically about a dog. There are some questions that you can ask, and we're going to talk about those in just a moment. But these service dogs are allowed in any public place. So that's lodging establishments, food, theater, you name it. Specifically lodging, I know, is what our focus is going to be. But the question is, well, how do I know it's a service dog? And there are two questions that you can ask. Now, I'm going to ask you this first off. If the person comes in and you think they're probably blind because maybe they have the darker glasses on, they're holding the dog and it specifically says service dog for the blind or something to that effect, it's very clear that that dog is being guided by somebody, okay? Don't ask, because it's pretty obvious, right? If the person's in a wheelchair and the dog is with them, it's a good chance that that dog is picking things up for them. They're able to assist them in a variety of needs. So you don't have to ask that. What it does say is that when it's not obvious, these are two questions that you can ask, okay? The first one, is the animal required because of a disability? Now, what you might get is somebody saying, well, you can't ask me about my disability. I wasn't asking about your disability. I'm just asking, is this an animal required because of a disability? It's just a yes or no, right? So hopefully the person is going to say yes, or they're going to say no if that's truly not the case and they're a bit surprised. Most of the time, of course, they're going to say yes, right? The next question, and by the way, this is on the tip sheet that you guys have in the center of your table. You have these two questions, okay? So the next question, and this is the more tricky one, is what work or task has the dog been trained to perform for you? What do you mean, what work or task? Now, I've asked this question to a lot of people, and what I have found sometimes is they get confused by it. And I'm not really sure why, but I've had to, in some cases, simplify it. I would encourage you guys as much as possible, ask it exactly the way it's written here. But if someone seems confused by it, you can simply say, so how does the dog help you? Oh, well then they tell me when my blood sugar is too low, or they pick things up for me. Okay, that makes sense, right? But for some reason, some people get a little bit confused by this question, but that's really what it comes down to, is what service or task. So if somebody says, well, I'm diabetic, your response should be, oh, I don't need to know what your disability is. By no means am I going to ask. I just need to know what specific service or task your dog has been trained to perform. Hey, listen, I told you I'm diabetic. I have an insulin pump right here, okay? I really appreciate your willingness to share with me. However, I just need to know, how does your dog help you? Well, he tells me when my blood sugar is too low. Cool, we're great then, right? Now, can you charge them a pet deposit? You cannot, okay? Can they leave their dog in the room and go out to dinner or wherever? No, they cannot. And we've heard of situations where this happens. This is my service dog. And they answer the questions correctly, and then they leave the dog there and they go somewhere else and the dog's left in the room barking. That is not allowed. So you know how you have their emergency contact information? You're going to call them and say, you need to come back and get your dog because your dog is barking in the room and it cannot disturb the other guests. But it's my service dog. Your service dog needs to be with you. The dog cannot be left in the apartment or in the room. What if the dog damages property? Can you charge? Absolutely you can, because you would charge anybody else, correct? But can you charge just a typical, like let's say that you do permit pets, but there's a $25 pet deposit, okay? $25 pet deposit for a pet. You cannot charge a $25 pet deposit for a service animal. But if either of these animals damages property, you can absolutely charge for that. Does that make sense? So hopefully that makes it a little bit easier to kind of go through with some of this. I know it can be a little bit confusing. Are there questions about this, by the way? Yes, please. Very good question. Thank you so much. Okay, so the animal does not have, the dog does not have to have a harness. It does not have to have a leash. It does not have to have a specific vest. It does not have to have paperwork, okay? It doesn't have to have any of that. By the way, you can buy any of those things online. Anybody could do that, and many people do. So you do not, they do not have to have that. In terms of, it does say that the dog has to be harnessed, leashed, tethered, or under the verbal control of the owner. So we have a situation, my full-time job is with Chase Field and with the Talking Stick Resort Arena. I'm their ADA coordinator. This is what I do all the time. So you can imagine how many people come in and out with their service dogs, right? And we have this one particular gentleman who comes to D-backs games fairly often. I think he's a disabled vet. And he comes in, and the staff were getting a little bit nervous because when he would go to the concession stand, he would have his dog on, it's kind of like a leash, but it's more like just a rope that he holds. He doesn't even wrap it around his arm. So he goes over to the concession stands and he gets his food, and then he lets that go and he carries the concessions back over to his seat, and his dog walks right along next to him. So the staff were getting a little bit nervous, like, no, I thought they had to be on a leash, they had to be holding the leash. Well, ideally, yes, but the truth is it also says they have to be at least under the control, the verbal control of their owner. Or in some cases, being on that leash means that the dog can't do the tasks it's performed to do or it's trained to do. So that's okay as long as the dog is right there. But if that dog starts running around, now we have a problem, right? If the dog is in your hotel and is a service dog, but they're not holding it onto a leash or anything, and that dog starts to bark at somebody else or it starts to run around, that's not okay. It still has to be under the control of the owner. So if it gets out of control, you can say you need to maintain control of the dog. Now, let's say the dog starts barking. You just hear the dog barking. You're like, why? They're not keeping the dog under control, right? Well, in some cases, it could be that the dog barks to alert you that the person has fallen down and that they're hurt, or they're having a seizure and they need assistance, or that something has happened. So in some cases, a dog might be trained to bark for those very reasons. But otherwise, the dog should not be barking, should not be disrupting anyone else, okay? By the way, you also cannot ask the person to have the dog demonstrate that it performs the task. Why do you suppose that is? Let's say the dog is trained to let you know when the person's having a seizure. Do you really want the person to just have a seizure right there so you can see if the dog really knows how to do it? Or do you really want to like give the person a whole bunch of sugar and see if the dog notifies you that their blood sugar spiked up too high? Probably not. So you cannot ask them to have the dog demonstrate the task. Okay? So hopefully this has been helpful. Again, the business shall not ask about the nature or the extent of a person's disability. The business shall not ask for documentation. The business shall not ask for a demonstration. Okay? So hopefully all of those have been helpful. When not to ask, again, we talked about this just a little bit. If the dog is observed guiding a person who is blind or has low vision, if the dog is observed pulling a person's wheelchair or providing assistance for stability. In some cases, we've seen like really big dogs like Great Danes that are walking alongside the person, and the dog is there to help stabilize them, okay? Some people get a little bit nervous about, well, what if it's a pit bull? We had a situation like this once. We had a pit bull that came to a Phoenix Suns game, and everybody got, not everybody, some people got a little bit freaked out about it. It doesn't matter what kind of dog it is. And by the way, pit bulls happen to be wonderful. I love my pit very much. They're wonderful dogs, and we can't discriminate against any one of them. But if it's a Chihuahua, though, how is a Chihuahua really going to be able to help somebody? Well, could they still notify them of their medication? Could they still alert them if their blood sugar is too high or too low with epilepsy? So again, regardless of the size or the type of dog, they could still be trained, okay? Again, we're talking about the handler's obligations. We talked about this again a little bit. The service animal must be under the control of the owner. Again, in some cases it might just be a voice control, but they still need to be under the control. What you guys need to do is make sure that your staff, I don't mean just your managers, I mean your staff. Middle of the night, someone calls and asks these questions, you need to be prepared. So make sure that all of your staff know the laws and the policies. You have this tip sheet, and the back of the tip sheet has information specifically for you guys to, for example, have at your front counter. So that a person calls and they ask some questions, you have some basic information there, okay? Make sure they're prepared to answer questions when called or when the guests arrive. And then do not ask, by the way, ever to pet the dog or distract it from its owner. As much as you might want to pet the dog, please do not ask, because it puts the person in kind of a tough spot. Now, some common questions here, and by the way, this is all on the Department of Justice website, okay? So can hotels assign designated rooms for guests with service animals? They cannot, okay? There's other things. Can they charge a cleaning fee? We've already said they cannot specifically charge a cleaning fee. Are they allowed to leave the service animal in the room? No, the dog must be under the handler's control at all times. It is right here in writing for you guys, okay? So I want to make sure, again, you know this is a resource for you. Again, why? Because this is the law, and we have to ask ourselves, is a lawsuit worth $10? The situation with the $10, it could have been really, really, really bad. And again, they lucked out quite a ways. I actually was on the phone when we had a mediation communication with Washington, D.C. on this through the Department of Justice. Unfortunately, it did go well, but I will tell you, it could have been really, really bad. There's tax incentives for ADA modifications. There's tax credits and tax deductions. And I'm going to go through this just a little bit. I want to ask first real quick, because we're going to wind down in a moment. Are there any questions about what we've been talking about so far? As you think of questions, please, yes, please.
So with the pool lift, is it okay to not have this battery in there, but have a sign saying that the battery's in office?
No, they will ask you that, and they will sue you for that, okay? So if you have a pool that is open from 8 in the morning to 8 at night, okay, that pool lift needs to be available there. If it's a portable one, it needs to be in place. It has to have its battery right there, and you have to have the covering off of it, okay, completely. So if I come in and I'm in a wheelchair, I should not have to try to pull that cover off. I should not have to see the battery's not there, wheel myself up to the front desk, wait for someone to go, oh my gosh, where in the world is that thing? I don't think that thing is charged, whatever. It needs to be charging every night when the pool is closed. You need to put it back in every single day. So when the pool is open, it needs to be completely readily available to any guest. And that, by the way, is a pool and a spa both. Absolutely a pool and a spa. Good question, thank you. And we see that a lot, by the way. A lot, where there's a cover over it or the battery's not in. They do make them now, by the way, that are solar powered, which makes perfect sense in Arizona, right?
Well, it's mainly because of the heat deteriorating battery.
Right. No, and that makes perfect sense, and I completely get that. That's why I think the solar powered ones can be very helpful, and I would suggest having 2 battery packs. And again, I understand the sun is going to beat the snot out of these things, but so is the lawyers, to be quite honest. And really, the spirit of the law says, I want to go and enjoy the pool with my friends and family, and I want to be able to just get into the pool. I don't want to have to go ask the front desk for the battery itself. So it's a good idea to have that there, and it's the law. Other questions before we talk a little bit about tax credits? All right. I don't like standing still. Are we getting all this? Okay, so you can go back and watch. I've never been so unanimated talking to a group. But I want to make sure that you guys can go back and watch this, or other people who weren't able to be here can also. So the tax credits and tax deductions are something you can use every single year, okay? Tax credit itself is for small businesses who remove access barriers from their facilities, provide accessible services, or take other steps to improve accessibility for customers with disabilities, just like it says, okay? A tax deduction itself is for businesses of all sizes to remove access barriers to their facilities or their vehicles, okay? A business that annually incurs eligible expenses to bring itself into compliance with the ADA may use these deductions or these tax incentives every single year. So now I want you to imagine you have it in your budget every single year because you've already done a transition plan report. You know, this is where I'm at, this is where I need to be, and this is how I'm going to get there. And every single year you're planning this out, right? And so if you have this budgeted every year, you work this out. And by the way, don't even ask me questions about taxes and money other than what I'm reading here, because I couldn't tell you. You need to talk to your own accountants to figure out, okay, what can we do and how can we optimize this? And here's an example that they give you. So Hotel ABC spent $20,000 on access improvements by modifying their guest rooms and their front entrance, okay? These expenditures qualify under both the tax credit and deduction. So ABC Hotel can take these incentives in combination. They may first take a tax credit of $5,000, okay, that's based on $10,250, that's kind of like that's the expenditures, and you can take half of that, okay? And then they can deduct $15,000, which is of course the difference between the total expenditures and the amount of the credit claimed. So you can do that every single year. So by the way, what happens when you work to improve access to your hotels? Do you put on that old wallpaper? Do you put back in that old carpet? You probably don't, right? You probably put in new things, and you're doing all these things as a remodel. So are you every single year making your hotel better, making it more attractive, making it more modern, whatever it is, you're making improvements to it every year, and you've got tax deductions and tax credits. Above and beyond what you would normally have as a business, you have this specifically related to improving access. And what this does, by the way, is it makes it better for everybody. It truly does. And so I really want to encourage you guys to take advantage of this and really plan out, how am I going to do this so I can maximize it every single year, so I can get the most out of this, every single year. This is a cartoon that I absolutely love, and I'm going to read it to you guys because I'm not sure how well you can see it, because I like to kind of explain it. What you have here, to sort of visualize it for people who might not be able to see it, is you have a picture of, it looks like somewhere back east, snow, and you've got a kid, and it looks like a schoolyard. You've got a kid in a wheelchair, he's at the bottom of a ramp. You have a couple other kids, and they're at the bottom of the stairs, and they're waiting for what's maybe the janitor or someone, and he is cleaning off the steps. Okay, he's taking the snow off of the steps with a shovel. The kid who's waiting at the bottom of the ramp in his wheelchair says, "Could you please shovel the ramp?" And the gentleman who's moving the snow says, "All these kids are waiting to use the stairs. When I get through shoveling them off, then I will clear the ramp for you." And then the kid says, "But if you shovel the ramp, then we can all get in." Now think about that for a second. When you have access, when you have an accessible entrance, think about how nice it is to have those automatic door openers when your hands are really full and you can just bump them with your hip and the door opens for you, right? Think about when you have that access, it makes it better for everybody. It truly does. And so this is a perfect example that when you make it accessible, it makes it better for everyone. And so that's really what we're encouraging people to do, is to just start thinking in terms of universal design. How can I make things the most accessible for everybody? And how can I myself start taking a look at my parking lot, my lobby, my rooms, my hotel in general? How can I take a look at all my properties from sort of a different perspective of how would I be able to get into this if, for example, all of a sudden I found myself in a wheelchair, or I found myself without my ability to use and open my hands? So you start thinking in terms of those things, and it really starts to make a big difference for you. So other questions? Anything at all? Because we have how much time now? 10 minutes. No, I like 10 better. 10 minutes. 5 to 10 minutes. Any questions at all? You know you're going to come up with some questions later. I will tell you the biggest culprits are the bathrooms. Again, if there's about 80 questions in bathrooms, you can imagine how many things we might find wrong. We find in many cases that just basic things, mirrors are too high, dispensers are too high. We find in some cases, of course, the toilet. A lot of times, for some reason, everybody buys toilets with the handle on one side. But you can buy them so the handle's on either side, right? And so what we find is we find a hotel that all of the toilets have the handle on one side. Well, that works really well in some situations. But in other situations, when it's an ADA room and the toilet is on the other side, that handle is supposed to be on the open side. So it's a matter of just having a different toilet. That's a really pretty basic one also, is you're making those choices. As you're purchasing products, I want you to think about that. So if you're purchasing a paper towel dispenser, for example, for a public bathroom, do you want the paper towel dispenser that you have to like twist to get it open? You know how it's supposed to automatically come out, but it doesn't? It gets shoved back up in there for some reason, and you actually have to take your fingers and you have to twist it to get it out. That makes it rather difficult. What I'd encourage you to do is get the kind that's like a paddle, that you can literally paddle the paper towels down, or you have the kind that you can lever them down. Either one of those, closed fist, okay? Let's see. Question? Please.
So question for you I had was, I know a lot of people use stuff like that, ABC News up in Phoenix, did a little documentary on some of the boards that have
Yes.
taking all the hotels for a loss and things like that. Now, are they still allowed to sue other hotels because they're under investigation? Are they stopping them, or what are the details on that?
They are still allowed to sue, and more important than that is anybody's allowed to sue you still. So you could literally have a lawsuit pending from this company, and I've seen this before, by the way. This organization is suing you, and at the same time, this organization comes in. And now you've got a double lawsuit. We've seen that on many occasions. If you're in the midst of, in fact, having a survey done, you could still be sued. So really, we want to encourage you as much as possible. Take a look at all of the outside things first and foremost. Take a look at those. Take a look at your website. If you don't have a pool lift, by the way, and you have a picture of your pool on your website, you're asking for trouble. You are asking for trouble. Please take the picture off there and then get that pool lift installed as soon as possible. And then you can put that beautiful picture back on with the pool lift installed. What I'll tell you in terms of the pool lifts too, by the way, is be really careful. Gosh, I'm going to say be really careful in general because I've seen too many times where somebody's really, with well intentions, my brother's friend's cousin can do this. And they're going to come install this pool lift. But they don't embed it down enough. And by the way, imagine the liability when someone who's pretty big gets into that pool lift and it hurts them. It gets tipped over. We had a situation where we had done an assessment. We give pretty detailed plans of this is what you need to do. In many cases, we do drawings, and I'm not an architect, but I do these lame little drawings, and I'll show you exactly what you need to do. So we had a situation where we actually went back up to a property. If at all possible, when we're back up in an area where we've done surveys before, we want to let the property owners know that we're there so that if they want us to come by and take a look at anything, we're more than welcome to do that, and there's of course no charge. So I was really excited when I went back to a particular hotel, and they were so excited to show me all the neat things that they had done, and it was fantastic. The lobby was fantastic. There was all these great things, and they took us into the bathroom of the newly renovated ADA room, and the sink was too high. And my heart sank. And the grab bars were too high. And my heart sank. And I thought, oh my goodness, they just put all of this money into renovating this hotel room and this bathroom. And the contractor who installed it didn't install it right. That's really sad. So please, please, please watch really closely. Don't assume that the person knows what they're doing. Take a look at the plans that we've given you. Take a look at, more importantly, take a look at the images, the illustrations that they gave you directly from the Department of Justice. And when that person's doing that, make sure you're keeping an eye. Don't just assume. I've seen many, many cases where they just installed something and the grab bars aren't correct. And that's a pain to have to take those grab bars out and to have to reinstall them with all the backing. So please take ownership of this yourself. Really take a good look at what's happening and make sure that they're following the law to the letter. In many cases, the ADA now is giving you like a leeway. So for example, a grab bar, 33 to 36 inches to the top of the grab bar. If I see a grab bar that's at 37 inches, there's no leeway there. It is, in fact, if it's 36¼ inches, there's no leeway there because they already gave you the range of 33 to 36. So be really, really careful when you're having things done. And sometimes, you know, they say you get what you pay for. Please be careful. You know, someone's going to give you a great deal, maybe, but did they do it correctly? There's a saying in the ADA world, and that is pay now or pay later. And it is really true, okay? It's really true. If you're going to do something, do your due diligence to make sure that you do it right the first time, because going back and doing it again can really be quite costly in so many ways. So I don't mean to bring the bearer of bad news. What I really want to do is make sure that I empower you guys to really take ownership of not only these wonderful businesses that you have that meet the needs of so many people every single year, but to really take a look and make sure that you're using the resources that you have to ensure compliance of your own building, because it's the law, because it's the right thing to do, and because someday you yourself might need this. So, questions, comments, because I'm sure I'm out of time. Okay, you guys have tip sheets right there. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Let me know if you need anything at all. Take care.